What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down 6 underrated heroes that can get you all the way up to Grandmaster, and we're going to be breaking them down and giving you some actionable tips and tricks so that you don't have to be a meta slave, but you can still pop off and climb to the highest ranks in the game. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for in-depth advanced VOD reviews over every single hero in the entire game. So if you want to break out of ELO hell like many of our GameLeap Premium subscribers have already done, do yourself a favor and go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now I'm going to the first character that we got for you on this list, an incredibly underrated pick because she just doesn't really get any pick rate, even though she is so damn powerful and unique of a hero. It's none other than Mei. Now many of you probably already winced when I said her name, but the thing is, Mei is incredibly powerful in certain scenarios, and if you can learn to abuse her in said scenarios, you can really get tons of first point holds and free wins as a result. Now, in order to really understand the power level of Mei, you gotta think about a lot of the characters that are seeing a ton of play right now. Specifically characters like Wrecking Ball, who you can slow, you can wall off when he tries to get his exit, and because you can freeze him and stop him from moving, your team can focus him down, and she's one of the few characters that can actually contest a Wrecking Ball in the entire game. Now, on top of that, she's really dominant against almost every single one of the tanks in the tank lineup. You think about a Roadhog, as long as you ice block the actual hook, which you should use as a fade ability just to dodge that cooldown, pop right out and freeze him, you can really easily focus him down. You can wall off characters like Ryan, characters like Zarya. She's incredibly great in a lot of different situations. Now, the one thing that you really need to get good at to have a decent neutral game on Mei is getting good at her ICICLE. But because the projectile moves so fast, you can actually flick the projectile at the end of its cast time, and practicing the Mei projectile just a little bit in like free-for-all or the training room or wherever you can, you're gonna get really good at it so quickly. And a lot of people that play Mei don't put enough time practicing that alternate fire, but the fact that you can actually contest characters like Echo if you get pretty good at it, and you can one-shot characters like Tracer in the mid game, that is extremely overpowered when you're so good at contesting tanks. And on top of that, make sure that you're playing Mei a lot of the time on maps with choke points like Iconwald, Hanamura, or anywhere that's close range. She's gonna be completely dominant. Now moving on to the next character that if you play him incorrectly, you're just gonna feed and die. But if you incorporate some expert strategies and disciplined gameplay, you can hard carry tons of games in lower ranks, and it's none other than Winston. Now, a lot of people understand traditional dive. You jump in with your diva, she DMs you from danger, and you just insta-delete their backline. Well, you can't do that anymore on Winston. There's Immortality Field, there's Brig, there's Moras. You cannot just hard dive into the enemy team and expect to get out safely, especially with characters like Echo that can beam you in a matter of seconds. Now, thankfully, you do not have to make these crazy plays to generate space. Just jumping into the enemy team, putting a little bit of damage into them, and then making it so you can back off on a whim can build you up ult charge and generate space because the enemy healers have to heal, the enemy DPS have to come look at you, and everyone backs up as a result, so you make space for your team. Now, that being said, that is not enough to carry you in games, but what is using your Primal Rage effectively. You see, Primal Rage is really the key to actually carrying on Winston, because you can force an engagement that is incredibly favorable. Think about something like Attack Nubani. How many times have you tried to dive that over and over and over again, and you're just getting shot from the high ground, and it doesn't feel like you could do anything about it? Well, if you think about the people that play on the upper lip, what you can actually do is when you finally get that ultimate after jumping in, playing safe, building up that ult charge, making sure you stay alive, is you jump behind the enemy, you ult, and you knock them off the high ground into your team that is playing main, and sometimes you can get 2 free kills this way. Now, this is just one example of what you can do with Primal Rage to literally hard carry an entire team fight with one ultimate, and that is really the power level of Winston. And a lot of you might be saying, okay, well, I suck at Primal Raging. Well, there's actually something that you can do. You can go into a practice range, make it so that you have unlimited Primal Rage, and practice booping around different characters, whether it's Ana, whether it's McCree. Practice with a lot of different characters and get used to the animation. Being able to to juggle enemies and hitting them multiple times, even while in the air, can make it so that you can burst down targets, you can put enemies exactly where you want to, and being able to displace enemies into your team, or boot people off the map, or just insta-kill people by slamming them into the wall. These are the things that is going to let you carry on Winston, and then framing your entire engagements based on living and building up ult charge rather than just trying to dive on the enemy and just insta-kill them all is going to allow you to have the impact that you need to carry on Winston. Then we'll go to the next character that is incredibly underrated but very powerful if you can master her movement, and it's Moira. Now, Moira is a really interesting character because she doesn't really excel at anything in this meta, but particularly for players at the lower rank, Moira gives you the tools to survive an onslaught of divers when you have no peel, no DPS that help you at all, but you can still get away safely, and of course, you can DPS and you can heal your tanks basically solo. Now let's go through these things one at a time. First off, we gotta talk about your fade, which you need to be using this differently depending on your own team composition and the enemy's team composition. You can't just waste your fade when the enemy has a Doomfist that hasn't dove into your team, because he's gonna see you use your fade, he's gonna dive on top of you, and you're gonna die without being able to do anything about it. Now, yes, in some scenarios you can use your fade aggressively, but you gotta think about what could punish you and why you're using it aggressively in the first place. Sometimes it's good to actually chase down a target who's low, because you could actually chase them down and finish them off, or diving in with your team if you're playing a dive composition and your team is going in really hard. Providing them with extra sustain as they go in can allow them to stay out in their dive a little bit longer, maybe get more value, or maybe just kill the entire team. Now, I mentioned DPSing on Moira, and a lot of people already have PTSD by that statement, but honestly, Moira is an incredibly good dueler, and that is something that you need to be able to do on supports. Now, I'm not saying run around the map, go flank enemies, and never heal your team. No, that is dumb. You're not going to get any value on Moira, but being able to DPS certain types of enemies that come after you, your supports, or your DPS is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, think about the matchup between the enemy Genji and your McCree. Your McCree has to hit some pretty difficult shots, he has to make sure to play around the enemy reflect, and he has to somehow try to survive up against this Genji that does have a slightly favorable matchup as long as the Genji gets the drop on him. Now, you can not only heal your McCree and keep him alive even up against that Genji, keep him out of those burst ranges, but you can just keep zapping that Genji and force that Genji to either run the heck away or just kill him outright. Now, on top of that, there are some characters that if they use their one particular cooldown on something else, they are actually vulnerable for you to fade in and go after them and then just DPS them. For instance, let's say that the enemy McCree is in an off angle, pretty close to your team, but not that close, and he's just shooting, he's shooting. Maybe your Genji goes in after him and your Genji gets flashed and killed. Now you know that that McCree does not have flash. Now, you as Moira can literally fade on top of that McCree, throw a damage orb, start damaging him, and then just crouch spam. Left, right, left, right. That McCree is not going to be able to hit you if you're really close and doing that like crazy, and he doesn't have his stun to shut you down. You're going to kill him, and then you're going to be able to get out safely. Now, essentially, you turned your Genji feeding into an actual refrag, and now you're at parity. Now, you could say Moira should never DPS. Well, she used your death as a DPS to capitalize on the enemy and then turn it into a 5v5, a winnable team fight, and that's what Moira can do on a dime. She can pivot as long as she's hyper focused on what cooldowns the enemy has, who is weak, who she can actually kill, and then of course always defaulting to making sure that she heals her allies and her tanks to keep them alive and allow them to win their matchups easier. Then we're going to the next hero that is actually really underrated, and it's Soldier. Now, a lot of people want to play some of the flashier DPS in this regard, especially hit scans. I mean, you have like Tracer, you have Ashe, you have Widowmaker, you have McCree, and they all have something about them that makes them very unique, and people flock to some of these characters, but a lot of people don't really realize not only the carry potential on Soldier, but the solo sustainability. Now, the best thing about Soldier in the low ranks is you can heal yourself and you have the mobility to get out of any bad situation. Now, that alone is just enough to pick the character because you honestly can't rely on shields and can't rely on heals in a lot of the lower ranks, and Soldier doesn't need either of those to be effective, so that is a plus in Soldier's regard. But talking about Soldier climbing yourself all the way up to Grandmaster, the beauty of Soldier is he's a god of taking 1v1 matchups. Just about every single DPS in the entire game has an either parity or a bad matchup up against Soldier challenger besides just specifically Doomfist, who is notoriously actually really bad in the meta right now. Now, of course, knowing your matchups is very important and how you're gonna be playing those matchups. Like, yes, you have a bad matchup up against Widow if you're trying to challenge her from very far away, but if you have good movement and you basically take engagements on the Widow that is in that mid to close range where the Widow is ineffective, hitting a Helix on her and bursting her down can come out of nowhere after you fade a couple of shots. Now, not just Widow, but just about any DPS in the entire game, you're not like, oh, I gotta switch off when they pick those DPS. You're good against just about anything, whether it's Pharah, Echo, you can zone away a character like Meg, you can put value into a character like McCree from afar and make sure that he doesn't get that flashbang on you. Essentially, he's a jack of all trades type of character that is just gonna always bring a consistent amount of value, and that can allow you to have a consistently high win rate and then climb as a result. But the one thing that you need to make sure that you're doing on Soldier is always taking those off angles or those high grounds, putting damage into the back of the enemy team, behind the enemy shields, or trying to focus down enemy supports. And you could do this on the high ground, and the reason that this is so beautiful on Soldier is we just talked about how many good 1v1 matchups he has. So if you keep harassing the enemy supports, what typically happens? Well, the DPS are gonna come for you, and if you know how to take these 1v1 duels, which you should practice, you're gonna be able to not only put damage into the enemy backline, but get like a Genji or whatever to chase after you, and then kill him because he's gonna fight you in your heal station. You're gonna be able to win that matchup, and then you can just go back to doing what you're doing, and it's pretty much up to the enemy team to stop you, which is actually really hard against a Soldier that not only knows when to stand his ground and win matchups, but when to run away and reposition. Now I'm gonna go to the next character that is incredibly underrated. People have often just scoffed at this character and just assumed this character is bad because she's gotten many nerfs, but no, this character is actually still completely busted, and of course it's Brig. Now in my mind, there are two big reasons why Brig is so damn good. The first and most important is that she brings a ton of intrinsic value, which is a term I've used on this channel multiple times, but basically the amount of value that you bring on Brig just by existing is immense. Imagine an Ana standing alone, right? And you're a DPS like a Genji or a Tracer, and you just want to kill that Ana. How easy is it for you to do so? It's pretty damn easy, right? You just go at her and you just, you know, you basically fade her cooldowns, you burst her down, you can make it happen. But now imagine that Ana is standing there, but there's a Brig right next to her. That doesn't just make it double as hard to kill her. That makes it 3 or 4 times as hard to kill that Ana. As before, that Ana that was alone, maybe one Tracer could take it down, but if an Ana and a Brig are together, maybe a Tracer and a Genji and a Winston all together still couldn't take it down. Essentially, you don't have to force things to happen on Brig, you create value just by existing. And then the second thing that is extremely powerful on Brig is the fact that you can pivot from a passive character that just brings value by existing, protects your team, to an aggressive character that helps your team run it down and clean up the stragglers. Your ultimate is incredibly good at getting your team to push in and makes it very difficult for the enemy team to win. I mean, Brig actual ult win percentage in team fights and pro play is actually ridiculously high. Now, on top of that, because of her passive heal, the armor that she provides, her ultimate, she actually creates what I would call a higher effective health. And while yes, burst damage can still burst down a lot of your teammates, if enemies are doing poke damage, they are not actually going to be able to confirm any kills, because every time your allies take poke, they're instantly getting healed up. Poke, healed up, poke, healed up, and Brig just allows your DPS to peek more aggressively. Not be as afraid, like your McCree can peek from the high ground, take a body shot, unpeek for a second and re-peek. He doesn't have to unpeek, wait for heals and all that type of stuff that we'd have to do with supports like Zen and Ana combined. All in all, we have a character that when you put her all together, she has a completely dominant win rate at low ranks, even all the way up to the higher ranks. She's still breaking that 55% win rate. And if you're looking for a character that is like your fast track to the high ranks on support, look no further than Brig, but I would suggest learning a couple of other characters so you don't actually just get boosted up by only Brig and then you can't play anything else besides Brig. Then we'll go to the last underrated hero that will get you to Grandmaster, and it's actually Zarya. Now, Zarya has been in a really weird state. For a while, she was one of the best characters to play because she was being played with Roadhog, which was the weirdest meta ever. But Zarya lost her place for a little while when Sigma was dominant, but now that Sigma is nerfed, there is a tiny window where Zarya can be one of the most powerful tanks in the game. Now, for one, the best tank in the entire game right now is undoubtedly Wrecking Ball, but Zarya Zarya can enable him in a way that no other can. Not only is the Zarya going to be able to basically prevent that Wrecking Ball from ever dying. I mean, literally giving a Wrecking Ball a bubble in the one scenario where you get CC'd a lot is just going to let him be immortal, basically. You're going to get a lot of ult charge in the process, and you're going to be able to build up a really powerful Graviton Surge that can be team fight winning, especially when the enemy team does not have a defensive ultimate. Not to mention, Zarya has the capability to just burst down people that are out of position, and when you start building up that high charge of Zarya, you can basically prevent enemies from pushing onto your team. You can demand space, and you do it based off your cooldowns. You push in when you have bubble, you back up when you don't, and you go in as a cycle. And as long as you practice your tracking, you make sure to burst enemies near the tail end of your beam or your charge with that right click or that alternate fire melee burst, then you can start tapping into the power level of Zarya, allowing you to carry game after game. But if you want in-depth VODs over any of these characters, the GameLeap website got you covered in the links down below with in-depth advanced VODs over Zarya, Briggs, Soldier, Mora, Winston, and Mei, plus every single character in the game. So do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.